Okay, so let's talk about faith tonight. What is faith? Faith is an everyday action. You don't just sit back and see, and you don't stick your head in the sand. You actively choose faith. You choose to believe what God has already said. We see memes like this all the time, and they remind us to have faith. So this one is faith that does not make things easy, it makes them possible. Luke 1:37. God always responds to faith. All things are possible to them that believe. Now faith is the assurance of things hoped for, the convictions of things not seen. That's Hebrews 11:1, if you can't see that. Faith is like Wi-Fi. It's invisible, but it has the power to connect to what you need. Faith expects from God what is beyond all expectation. And this is a recent one I just saw. Faith sees the invisible, believes the unbelievable, and receives the impossible. And they remind us to have faith. And sometimes we need that reminder, as they should. But we also sometimes overuse that word to the point of no importance. We take faith for granted. We need to intentionally choose faith every day. Faith is a verb. It takes action. That action may be to be silent. It may be to keep standing, keep believing, keep decreeing, keep praying, keep the promises in front of you. It may be to rest and just have peace, to sit and just thank God for what He's doing on behalf of that situation. All of those take action. And until you know what the next step is, you keep standing in faith. In Exodus 14, God parted the sea, and we see this great miracle of the children of Israel walking across on dry land. And then he closed the sea on top of the Egyptians. To me, this is an act of faith by standing. It's also by walking into faith. Now, this picture looks like it's just a little stroll straight across. In actuality, it's 1,600 feet down to the bottom of the sea. So imagine you're happy, you're free, and then all of a sudden this major obstacle comes up. I can hear some of them saying, I knew something would happen. You know, waiting for the other shoe to drop. It was too good to be true. He brought us out here to kill us all at the same time. And you know that there was some of them out there that were saying, I told you, Martha, it was all just a conspiracy theory. Now what are we going to do? We followed Moses out here, and it's a dead end. I think he's part of the deep state. And then what about Moses? God, did I miss it? Should I have turned right instead of left? Then God tells Moses, lift up your rod and stretch out your hand over the sea and divide it. Do what? I mean, really, you're doing something that you've never seen. You've never seen the ending of this story. It's never happened. And you're supposed to just believe that you can do it. But with faith, you do believe. What God tells you, you know that you can do. I don't know how. Sometimes I don't know why. But I can do it. Through God. So he had to stand in faith at the edge. And then take a step and walk in. And God told him what to do. He had to make a choice to believe and walk into it. Deep down into it. Then the Israelites had to also have faith and walk into it. You know, if I'm in a hurry, okay, I probably shouldn't say this, but if I'm in a hurry at a light and it's green and it's, you know, back there by the wall, I just will that light to stay green. And it's like, stay green, stay green, stay green, stay green, stay green. And I just keep on going. Can you imagine running through this? Stay up, stay up, stay up, stay up, stay up. Because you're literally giving it all to God. If this comes down in the middle of it, it's over. The Lord will fight for you. He does it. But you have to enter into it. You have to actually take that step and walk into it. Enter into this never before seen miracle that God is doing right before your eyes. You have to trust God 100% that He's going to see it through. And I know that everybody in here knows exactly what that is. We're in many miracles now. So we have to take that faith position, a conscious, deliberate choice to put your complete trust in God. You know, some people have more trust in Amazon than they do God. You place your order, and then they tell you when it's going to be here. Then they give you a disclaimer that it may not be there that soon. And then they let you know when it's shipped. Sometimes. Then it's in transit, and Amazon will now, on my phone, I got an update, and it said, Amazon is now 30 minutes away. And it had a map, and it showed me exactly where they were in my neighborhood. And I was like, okay. And then they sent me a picture of it on my doorstep. Some of you are like me. And you're thinking, I sure wish God had that kind of tracking system. But you know, He does. Because you place your order when you pray. Sometimes it's back ordered. When it's shipped, it's just like all of the prophets confirming what's coming. Over and over and over, they tell you, it's still coming, it's still coming. This is what to expect. This is sometimes when to expect it. It's on its way. And then suddenly, it's at your door. The in transit is where we get into unbelief. And that's where we start questioning and listening to the outside world. Bill Johnson had a really good way of putting this. A mustard seed all by itself can move a mountain. But when you plant other things in your garden, they consume the nutrients that are meant for that mustard seed. So you have this garden, you have a mustard seed in there, and then this seed of complaining wants permission to be planted in there. You have a quick moment to decide whether you want that planted in your garden or not. Do you deal with it right now so that it doesn't set down roots? Or do you let it in? So here's a modern day example, or actually a real life example I have for you. Sunday I fell. Thud. It was not just a pretty fall. I fell, and there was a moment that I wanted to give in. I wanted to go to the hospital. I wanted painkillers. But I knew the way that I fell, that they would probably put a boot on me and an armrest. Whatever they do on that, I don't know. But in that moment, I had to choose. And I was asking God what I should do, and Holy Spirit conveniently reminded me that I was going to be teaching on faith. So I thought, do I really believe? He says He can heal, and I stand on that. This is a covenant. That's what by your stripes we are healed means. So my point of no return, I believe, was right there. Where does my faith lie? Do I believe the doctors that can heal me, which they can, and I have every right to believe and go, and we can go through a process of healing? Or do I believe that God can heal me? I've never seen a leg grow back. I've never seen someone raised from the dead. But I have faith that God can do that because I've heard the stories. Because I know what my God can do. I know his power. I've also fallen before and gotten up and had a scrape on my knee and gotten up, wiped it off, and was sore for a couple of days. How do I know I didn't break something then? And God healed me then, just like that. This time it didn't work that way because I needed some stories to tell you. I needed to walk out my faith. Not that God did any of that, but he is using it to teach me. Okay. So anyway, I didn't want to let that seed be planted. I believe God. I am healed. God can do all things. Now, in the moment, it's scary because you go thud whenever you're older. You can go boom and get right back up when you're 2. You don't get right back up when you're older. But you can with faith. So, I dealt with it right there. I continued to tell myself, I am healed. God can do all things. This is from the enemy. I'm not letting you plant in my garden. It could be removed if I let it plant, but it's a bigger pain to dig it up and weed it out than it is to just do it right then. So God exposed what the enemy was trying to plant, and I had that responsibility to expel it myself quickly. Because if you let anything like that get in, then it magnifies and it spreads very quickly. And this is also why it is vitally important to have spirit-filled people around you. I had people praying for me. My mom was doctoring me up with ice packs and essential oils and speaking over me, and I was rebuking the enemy and fighting to keep my garden from impurities. It was Sunday morning, so I had the church praying for me, and it was to the point where I just laid back and released the trauma, because there's trauma when you fall, the scariness, the body trauma, all of that. But I had to just lay back and receive the prayers of healing that were going forth, because I knew and I could trust and I had faith in them and in God for that healing. I also had to be honest with God and tell him I got a little unbelief too, because I haven't seen this and I don't want to hurt for a long time and I don't want to wait. All the doubting, all the questioning comes up. But you have to reach out and ask him. Be honest with him. He already knows. I have a little unbelief and I need your help. Help me to believe. You are my confidence, but I'm fighting this, God. And I do have that unbelief, but help me. So we also have to be aware of how we share. Sometimes we take our identity in the size of our problem, because sometimes we would rather have sympathy from a friend than breakthrough from a person of faith. Just be careful that we don't want to, be careful how we share, because we don't want to start feeding off of that. When I fell, I didn't have any swelling. I called and I had some counsel from 3 different people. And I took that counsel and the counsel of God, and I did what I felt like I needed to do, and walk it out a little and rest it a little, and essential oils and ice packs. But it's a little... when you've done something like that, I have just this little bruise right here. That's it. I promise you. It hurt. But yet that's what a miracle is. You see no evidence of it. I'm standing here. I was writing last night. When it happened, I could not stand. I could not walk. I could not hold my phone in my hand. And part of you wants everybody to see that part so they know what the miracle really, how deep and how wonderful the miracle really was. But yet if everybody knew, then you'd still be over here in pain and hurt. But he healed it. So it's a round and round thing. There are times, too, when the measure of faith is compared to the number of questions that you keep pondering and meditating on, that which you keep fueling with the energy of your soul, is too big of a battle. You actually have the faith of God. That when it's by itself, it's more than enough to move that mountain. But because we've allowed it to be planted with other competing things, we're in a war that God did not create for us. So there's too many seeds planted in my garden. It means there's other options. There's too many other things to believe. Too many other opinions. According to Jesus's example on the size of faith, it doesn't take big faith to move something as large as a mountain. It just takes a small amount of faith. Maybe when Jesus was talking about great faith or greater faith, he may have been talking not about the size, but of the quality. That's why it's great, because it can stand on its own. Its impact and significance, its mountain-moving weightiness is not in its size. It is getting all of the nutrients it needs because there's no competing. There's no competing thoughts. There are no weeds to kill it out. It's strong and it's capable. There's a Chinese bamboo tree, and it takes 5 years to grow. They have to water it and fertilize it every single day. It doesn't even break ground for 5 years. But once it breaks ground, then within 5 weeks, 5 weeks, it grows 90 feet tall. So if you stop watering and nurturing it at any time, it dies in the ground. So see if this sounds familiar. You water and nurture this ground, or this vision, or your dream for 5 years. And people are saying, you've been doing this for 5 years. This is all you've got to show for it? Are you kidding me? They're going to tell you you're crazy. They're going to tell you you're a fool. You should have given up a long time ago. But then, 5 years later, after you have nurtured that ground and you have watered that ground. All of a sudden, it breaks ground, and it shoots 90 feet tall in 5 weeks. And it was a struggle. You had to ignore the naysayers. You had to stay in faith and keep doing the same thing every day without any outward appearance that anything is changing. But the person that you become, the character that you build, the courage and the strength that you develop, the faith that you pour into suddenly becomes a beautiful plant that stands so tall, and it illuminates the glory and splendor like you never thought it could. Your faith in what you knew manifests before your very eyes. Complacency does not demonstrate the kingdom. And it's hard to stay in faith when nothing seems to be happening. But you are a king. Kings don't run, kings rule. Kings don't hide out. Kings have dominion. It's time to be intentional in our faith. Rule and have dominion over your mind, your thoughts, those things that want to plant roots in your garden. You've got to say no. The garden of your mind and thoughts are for godly things, not things of this world. They only cause a false sense of spirituality, causing a busyness and an artificial significance. Don't take responsibility for things that God didn't say you were responsible for, because those very things become the cares of this world that compete for that nutrient of the seed. Faith makes no sense. If you try to wrap your head around it, you're just going to get unbalanced, because it honestly doesn't make a lot of sense sometimes. If it makes sense, you probably ought to go back and check. And when you're talking about faith, faith is not something that you just desire and you just want. It's something that God has laid out for you. Something that God has told you in His scriptures. Personally, that's something that you can tangibly grab hold of. My 4-year-old granddaughter had this thing for a couple of weeks. It stopped shortly, but she would just stand there and nobody may be around, and she would just go, "I'm fainting, someone catch me." And she would go down. Well, her sister knew, so she would grab her, and she's like, "She just does that. I always catch her." Well, that's okay, but sometimes we don't have the power to run over there and catch her. It's not just because you want somebody to catch you. This is a mandate from God that you're fulfilling, and you have the faith in God and in what He says, not just in what you want to do. Because that's like saying, "Okay, God, I want to go jump off that cliff and see how it feels. Just catch me." It's not going to happen. I mean, if it does, let me know. But I'm not going to try it. There's faith every single day. It's not always big things, but yet they're big things to us. In that moment, that is a huge thing. Faith for provision. You need that provision in that moment. There's been many a times that I've gotten that provision, a check in the mail, from a doctor's office from 5 years ago. Who does that? And yet that covered a gas bill. I didn't have it before. God, these are the bills that I've got this week. This one is due today. Look. When I go to the mailbox, I've got today's provision right there. Tomorrow may come tomorrow. I know for a while there were several different things that God would lay out for me. Jobs. I would just do several different jobs. Whatever came along, I would do. And there was one time that it's easier to have faith for $50 in your gas bill than it is for $500 in your rent. So I'm like, okay, God, I got a week and I need the rent money. So what am I going to do? Where's the job? Where's the money? What am I going to do? And I got this call from my friend that she said, hey, I can't go on this job, but I've got a friend. She needs somebody for a week to go with her to the art show in Amarillo. Pays $500. So I went. And I ended up doing that very regularly. And God had grace on me after a while and gave me a different position doing that, because that was dealing with food and watching people eat and cleaning up after them. And that's not personally my thing. So I went, and another lady had some stuff that she needed me to do. So I would go on to craft shows with her. And that had to do with material and runners for tables. And that was very comfortable for me. I liked that instead. But sometimes you have to step out and you have to do the things that you don't want to do. And God will change that eventually. But He had it laid out right there. Faith for protection. We talk about tornadoes all the time. The hail. I don't know if tornadoes really jump over houses and skip houses. I don't know if that's how they're really made to do, or if it's just because there are praying people scattered all throughout that have used their faith and know the power of God, and those houses were spared. Because He's done it many times. And hail on your car when everybody else's cars have got hail damage and you have nothing. But you had faith. Driving through a storm. I drove through a blizzard. I was 21 years old. My mother got all of her gray hairs that year because I took off and went to California. And I can't tell you that I was really thinking about faith or anything else, but my mom was praying. And I was on the edge of a mountain, and so I couldn't pull over, and I knew I couldn't pull over, but I couldn't see in front of me. And then all of a sudden, there were these lights of a truck, a big semi-truck in front of me, and we just crept, and I just followed that thing out. And when it dissipated and the snowstorm lifted and we couldn't see anything, I'm telling you, I looked for that truck and I did not find it. I also went to the wharf by myself late at night. I wasn't really thinking about protection at the time. I was just having fun. I was 21. And I was looking out on the wharf, and this man came up and he started talking to me, and he said, "Now don't go over there. You need to stay over here." And I said, "Well, I'm ready to eat something." "Okay, go over here to the wharf. That's a good place to do it. And then you need to take that road out, and you need to be gone by 10. And tell me exactly the route to take." So I told him thank you. And I started walking this way to go to the restaurant. I turned around to tell him something else. And there was nobody there. So even when you're praying in faith for your loved ones, they may not know it at the time. Years later, I totally understand it. And I understand what a miracle that was and what a blessing that was, that God provided me with, an angel truck. I don't know if there was anybody driving that thing or not, but I was following its lights. And this angel, whose name was Michael, he told me his name. He gave me directions, and he was gone. Sometimes when you're praying for your loved ones, it may be years. And sometimes you have to pray in faith that God will bring someone else to them because they can't hear what you're saying. For years and years, people were praying for my dad. And I did not know that any of that was fulfilled until I went to him and realized that he had this lady that he would go see on a regular basis. It was a business thing, and he would have to sit in the lobby and talk with this guy because the other guy, or the lady, because the other guy wouldn't be there. And he'd always have to wait for 30 minutes to an hour. But she was a spirit-filled, tongue-talking Christian that talked my dad's ear off. And he sat there and listened and loved her to death. Just loved her. He also had a gentleman there that he was really good friends with that I found out was a pastor. So he could actually talk with these people and accept what they were saying. And by faith, we just had to pray and know that God was doing it somehow, some way. And then years later, we found out that he was. We don't need to know everything about every situation. We just have to have faith that God's dealing with it. Of course, faith for healing. I every time I tilt over on this leg, I'm like, wow, that's cool. Because that's not something that I could do yesterday. I'm sorry, I just think it's really cool because in 2 days, I was hopping around. I had a little scooter and a cane and everything else. But I got things to do. I got places to go, and it involves some walking and some shopping and some doing and some get up and going and some writing, and I don't have time for that. Had I gone ahead and taken the other route, which was my choice, I could have done that. And I came close because pain will try and overtake it. But yet, that pain was gone when I started receiving the prayers of the people that I actually engaged in my life. That's been a very big lesson. I knew that, but when you actually are thrown into that situation and you see the results and you see exactly the severity of it, the process of it, and you go through all the different emotions and the people that come alongside you that lift you up and don't let you get down, because there were times too that I would say, I guess I wasn't supposed to go see that today. I think I said that to Debbie, and Debbie was like, oh, no. And she brought me back in. Okay, that's right. So that is vitally important to have those type of people around you. It depends on the tribe that you have around you. So we learn a lot through faith. Sometimes it feels like we're going through a lot. But we don't learn a lot without going through it. Because somebody can tell you something and you can go, yeah, that's right. Just like you can see all of these Facebook memes on faith, and if you don't know what it is, feels good. Let's do it. But yet you have to do it yourself. You have to walk into that. So I just pray for wisdom and grace for this next season that we're going to step into. Oh, I skipped a page. Okay. Faith does not deny a problem's existence. It just denies it a place of influence. And I'm going to read that again because it's very important that you understand that faith doesn't deny that that problem is there. It is there. But don't give it any influence. Don't give it any hold. Kick it out of your garden. De-weed your garden. And make your garden only full of the godly thoughts, the godly people. So, we just ask God tonight to illuminate the things that we have allowed to be planted, and we de-weed our garden, and we pluck out all that is not of you, God. Nourish our garden, nourish our mustard seed of faith, that we may do what you have destined for us. In Jesus' name, we thank you. Oh, there's another pretty picture too.